Welcome, everyone. We'll give folks a couple of minutes to get in here and logged in as we get our webinar started. Welcome to our first FabFems Friday of the summer. We're excited to have you join us. Let's see the number of participants slowly rising, so we'll give a minute or so as that's happening before we get going. Happy Friday, everyone. All right, it looks like it's slowed down a little bit. So let's get started. Welcome to our very first FabFems Friday of the summer. Today we have a focus on STEM explorations in mindfulness, creativity, and design thinking. We have a fabulous lineup of FabFems Friday webinars throughout the summer, every Friday throughout June and July. So we hope you come back and join us weekly as we welcome in amazing STEM role models to share their stories with you. I'm Trisha Berry. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the Executive Director for Women in STEM at the University of Texas at Austin. And we sit within the Division of Diversity and Community Engagement. And today I've also got Amy Beebe with me, who is helping with the Q&A portion of the webinar. You have a Q&A section of Zoom here where you can throw in questions as we're going along, and we will try to make sure we get through as many possible questions as we can throughout our time with our fabulous panelists and at the end as well. So let me tell you just a little bit about what's happening. We are focused on FabFems, female STEM role models, and showcasing amazing things that our role models are doing that align with the themes for our FabFems Fridays. You can find more fabulous, amazing STEM role models on our FabFems database, which is managed by the National Girls Collaborative Project. Fabulous female STEM role models can create profiles, and they share how they want to be connected. So students participating, if you want to find someone who matches up with your interests and experiences, you can contact them via email or other options through the FabFems database. There's lots of different ways to connect and to find people in similar interested areas. We also will be adding all of our FabFems Friday webinars to our WeSTEM YouTube channel. And we also have a lot of other videos that talk about different STEM disciplines and highlight STEM role models. So make sure you get subscribed over there. You can see what that looks like as we go throughout the summer as well. If you miss one of our FabFems Fridays and you want to go back and reference, you'll be able to find us there. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing because that's the last of the presentation portion of today. And what we want to do is jump right into our fabulous panel. And so today, again, our focus is on STEM explorations in mindfulness, creativity, and design thinking. And we'll have each panelist share a little bit about themselves, share some quick introductions to get us going. And then after introductions, we will have a facilitated panel. We've got some pre-selected questions, some questions we'll ask them to start, but we're also, again, going to be taking your questions. We want to make sure your questions get answered. So feel free to submit your questions in at any time into that Q&A area of the webinar system. So with that, let's get into our introductions. Let me turn it over to Angela. Would you like to start?
Sure, I can start. My name is Angela Bose, and I am, let me think. So I am from Washington, D.C. area. That's where I grew up. And I have a bachelor's degree in aerospace engineering from Purdue, and then a master's degree in aerospace engineering from the University of Texas. And I work at NASA. Been working at NASA for just over 20 years. Let's see, and a little bit about me. I enjoy traveling, hiking, being active. I play soccer and just being outside. So thank you for having me today.
Awesome. Thanks, Angela. Carly, tell us about you.
Hey everyone, I'm Carly Haithcock. I grew up in Memphis. I went to Auburn University for civil engineering, and then I moved to Texas 2016. I'm a civil engineer. I mostly do transportation projects. I get to do a lot of active transportation projects, so biking, walking, transit. And then outside of work, I also like to play soccer. And I also like to bird watch.
Okay. I was just outside watching some of my birds before the webinar started today. They're very busy today. Let's get started talking about mindfulness and creativity. I love that you both are coming to us from very different areas and different industries and different pathways. And so, we know that as our mindfulness increases, creativity increases. Creativity increases when we have that time to be mindful and to sometimes take that step back. So can you talk a little bit about how mindfulness and our creativity are part of your STEM work? What does that look like in your world? Carly, do you want to start?
Yes, what comes to mind for me is because I'm in active transportation, like I said, there isn't necessarily, the Green Book. If you're a civil major, you've probably heard of the Green Book. There's not just an answer in a book somewhere for how to design bike lanes and help people walk or bike or use transit. So I find it pretty creative as a profession. And that's what I really enjoy about it. When I started off my career, I was in land development and it felt very kind of robotic, and you were just doing paperwork and you didn't really get to do anything unique or creative. And I think that's why people become engineers, is they like to build things and see things change. And so I think there's definitely parts of it that can feel not mindful or creative, but you can kind of find a path where you get to be a little bit more innovative and think for yourself.
Great, thanks. Angela, what about your world?
So I think probably I have done trajectory design my entire career, flight mechanics analysis. So and the trajectory of, and I've done it for interplanetary missions as well as missions, entering the atmosphere. So the work that I've done has an impact on the larger system as a whole. And so in that regard, automatically you've had to be creative from the outset of how to come up with solutions, because there's lots of different pathways you can follow from point A to point B, but they have implications to all sorts of other areas of a project. And understanding the needs of those areas and then being able to creatively meet the needs and balance the needs across all different areas has just been a part of how I've had to work my entire career. So there's definitely opportunity for creativity involved with that. You have to be in order to just kind of survive in the role that I've been in. I think the mindfulness part of it, I was thinking about that, being able to be curious and open to different solutions and not judge them from the get-go of like, oh, this won't work, is definitely a part of how I work. And so having that mindset and allowing yourself to kind of be in that space is an important part of being able to find solutions that meet end user needs.
I like that. And you both talk about how there's not really a set pathway, right? Carly, you kind of mentioned that there's not one way to get to a solution in a book that's guiding you step by step to get the things done. And so if you think about your work and you think about how you get to be in that creative space, can you maybe talk a little bit about what that might look like in the workplace? Do you have meetings where it's that open creativity time? Do you have time on your calendar where you're like, this is my thinking time? How does that come to play in your daily world?
I think it's been kind of an adjustment since work from home started. I work from home most of the week and I really like it, but I do, when I go to the office, I feel like because haven't been around each other, we talk more and collaborate more. And I think just, for me, it's like designing streets. So it's like roll out a big piece of paper and just start sketching something. And like Angela said, like you shouldn't constrain yourself. Like this won't work. It didn't work here, so it'll never work anywhere. And yeah, just it should be iterative. I think a lot of people come out of undergrad thinking or feeling like they need to get to the answer immediately and that's it. And there is no interim. It's just there is an answer and here it is and move on. And I think for most things it is iterative. Like everything we know about engineering has been an iterative process over, hundreds, thousands of years. So yeah, I think be comfortable like asking questions and throwing out ideas, even if you don't know it's right, or maybe you know it's wrong, but just getting comfortable like speaking up is gonna open up your mind to be able to be more creative.
Yeah, I want to add on to kind of some of the things that Carly was saying here. I think asking you learn as you go in your career to ask different questions to hone in a little bit, maybe more quickly in that iterative process of what the real needs are. And so you can maybe design a little bit quicker to an end solution, because that iterative process often is just a tool for you to uncover what is really needed and to be able to arrive at solutions that way. But in the workspace, I guess, oftentimes a lot of the work I would traditionally do in trajectory design would be solo, and then bringing back that to a larger group and helping them to understand the implications of that, understanding what that means, and then going back and doing solo work again. The role that I'm in at the moment is with the Langley Future Work team. And so it's been much more human-centered and around organizational design and how we work in a hybrid environment. And so we have really started to use different tools and collaborate more with each other in order to design and that type of role. So I've seen a little bit of both ways. But for me personally, I often do a lot of my best thinking when I'm not sitting in front of a computer. So going out for a walk, randomly cleaning like my house, it's not a fun job, and your mind wanders. And so oftentimes like my problems that I'm trying to solve kind of pop up in my head then, and I'm able to think through it. So that's kind of personally how I managed to do problem solving and be creative.
I like that you both talk about those kind of off the computer times. Carly mentioned even the getting out the piece of paper and actually physically drawing and writing things out to get some of those juices flowing. But then you also talked about kind of that mindfulness that can come with the collaborations and those interactions with other people in a team. So I like the kind of dual way of thinking about it. Mindfulness doesn't have to be just you, and it doesn't have to be on a computer, and it doesn't have to be with technology. It could be a variety of things to get you to that creative space. Amy, do you want to ask this question before I move on?
I don't think that I have anything else to add to that.
The question in the Q&A.
Oh, gotcha. Do you practice meditation regularly? Have you ever gotten an incredible idea as a product of meditation? Such a fantastic idea or question.
I do not personally do that, although it's something that I mean, just to share with you, I tend to sometimes have anxiety, so it is something that I've thought about that would be helpful for that and helping me to focus. Sometimes I think as you get busier, it also feels like it's hard to carve out that time to be mindful, and so to discipline, I've thought that maybe I need to engage in, and I haven't been disciplined enough yet to engage in it. So, what about you, Carly?
Same for me. I've tried it a few times, and I do like quiet, so I should like meditation, but I don't know, I probably should try it out a little more intentionally.
I think that's a great question. You got us all pondering, whoever asked that. I will say I'm kind of in the same boat. I actually have the Calm app. And so I get in these stretches where, kind of like you mentioned, Angela, like the stress of the day or the days or the projects kind of hits you, and it's like, okay, I just need to take a moment to breathe. And so I might on my watch do the little, breathe app thing for a minute, or maybe do the Calm app or turn on the Calm music while I'm doing some work. So I've done some of that. I can't say I've had any great aha creative moments in that, but it does, I think, from that decreasing the stress, it does kind of force you to pause and take that deep breath and relax for a moment. So great question. Keep those questions coming in to the chat. We're going to move on, and I know there was a question there in the chat around work and what do you do, so we're going to get into that. So Angela, why don't you kick us off? Can you tell us a little bit more about your role? You started to give us some glimpses of that in what you've shared already, but what do you do? And if you can maybe tie in design thinking, what does design thinking work, or how does that come to play in what you do?
So I mentioned that, I've done trajectory design, so I've primarily done that for interplanetary and then atmospheric entry. In the past, say, 15 months, I've been in a detail role. NASA has these collateral duty roles you can jump into. And so it's more in the realm of organizational design. And so kind of taking the how of you get from point A to point B, like I've done with trajectories, and then applying it to how can people work with each other effectively as a system and in a hybrid world, and exploring what that means. What are the new norms that people need to follow, new processes, new way we organize, and things like that. So the design thinking that we started to do is this is very collaborative by nature. Like, you're making decisions around humans and how they operate with each other, and so you have to involve humans in that process and keep it centered on what are the real needs of people. And so it's been really cool. We've had design sessions where we involve people and go through using some of the design thinking tools to build empathy or understand personas and different aspects of how people work and how they want to work, to better understand what are our real needs and what kinds of solutions we might have. We've used it also to generate solutions, kind of do design sprints. And it's just been really fun. So that's a little bit of some of the ways that I've been able to employ it in my current role. But I have ideas about how we could do it in technical ways too. So
you mentioned the words design sprint, and others may have heard that word. I know I've heard that phrase before. What does that mean when you say design sprint?
So it's using different tools there's all sorts of facilitation tools out there. So you can Google facilitation tools, or you can Google design thinking and come up with all sorts of things. So I haven't had any formal design thinking or design training, or you can Google human-centered design. But I've been working with, it's a really diverse team. And so some of the group members that I've worked with they're not what I would traditionally think of as STEM, but they're industrial organizational psychology. So they come at the science of how humans behave, very differently than how an engineer comes at solving a problem. But they're very skilled and facilitating. I've learned a lot from them and how to kind of come up with different ways of, in a group, using different tools to arrive at a solution. And so there's different facilitation methods that you could use to kind of, like, on mural boards. I don't know if any of you guys have ever used mural boards or things like that, to get people to walk through a process of generating ideas and then evaluating those ideas and kind of seeing what you come up with, and presenting problems too in a like a persona type way.
Thank you. Carly, what about you? What do you do?
So I try, and I'm mostly successful, to make a schedule, usually on Fridays for the week ahead, but sometimes it happens on like a Tuesday. And I schedule it my week in like 4-hour increments of, like, I'm going to do this in the morning and this in the afternoon. And I try to check in with myself and try to think, like, am I still, like, really thinking about this task, or do I need to change to something else? Because, like, some people can work on the same thing all day. I don't do my best work working that way. And there's some things I'm just like, I can't do this today. Like, I just know I'm not going to do a good job, or I just don't want to do it. So I try to just stay ahead of my schedule so that I can, like, make it my schedule and not like someone else's, wants me to do this and I have no choice kind of situation. So I think, sometimes you are going to be in the position, like I'm in consulting, which I think is not a very good framework for work. But you can kind of learn to play the game. And I think that's part of what it is with work, is just knowing how you work and trying to set yourself up to be in that position, knowing sometimes you're not going to be, and you just kind of have to get through it and then start over, but not overthink it. Like, sometimes, done is good enough.
I love that. That's a hard thing for all of us who like to be those perfectionists, which we probably have many on this call, where you want it to be perfect in all ways, but sometimes done is good enough. You mentioned consulting. So what does that mean to be a consultant? What does that look like in your world? And maybe tell us a little bit about how that plays out with your engineering work.
Yeah, so maybe most engineers, at least in civil, are in consulting. A lot do work in the public sector, but a lot are going to be at a consulting firm where you're hired by some agency like a city or a county or state. And there's a budget and a scope and a schedule. And because of the way like public sector money is kind of monitored and they can't just hand out money, there's a lot of rules and kind of like there's a reason for the way consulting is run to some degree. So it can be kind of frustrating to feel like I want to spend 8 hours to do this, but I only have 4, or everything is lining up all at once. Like when all your midterms are all at once, it's going to keep happening. So, I mean, it's definitely like, I've always been in consulting. I think I did do a little bit in private sector as part of a staff or public sector as part of a staff augmentation team. So I got a little taste of like what the difference is between being at a public sector job versus private. And I think there's benefits to both and tough things to both. So it's something to keep in mind. Like some people don't want to do one or the other. And I think it's something to start talking, like, especially in undergrad, to people that are working in either one and kind of see what they're like, because everything is kind of right and wrong for different people. But it is cool. Like you get to work all over the country and sometimes you get to travel if you want to do that. And you get to see a lot of different things instead of just working, at your one, city or something.
All right. Thanks, Carly. And welcome to we have our panelist, another panelist joining us with another very different background. Would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are? And we were just having Angela and Carly share with us a little bit more about their role in the work that they do and design thinking, kind of how that comes into play in their work. Can you kind of wrap all that up in your sharing of who you are?
Sure. First of all, I'm sorry I'm late. I had 3 reminders on my phone and I got held up in my last commitment and I was kind of panicking and had a hard time getting in the meeting. So anyway, I'm just so happy to be here and great to see you all. I'm a PhD student, so I'm probably the least experienced of all the panelists here. But maybe the advantage of that is I am still a student and so have some kind of connection to maybe the students who are watching. I study acoustics in the Department of Mechanical Engineering at UT Austin. And I thought this was a great kind of event for me to participate in because a lot of my research has to do with mindfulness and creativity. It's a blend of kind of science and art. And so in terms of design thinking, a lot of kind of the creative inspiration that comes into my research, which is very mathematical actually, comes from just looking at nature and looking at art. It has to do with having a very broad view, being always perceptive of the world around us and seeing my studies in and through this world. So it's a very transcendental kind of process. It involves a lot of kind of meditative aspects. Hopefully that kind of provides some insight into my field and hopefully dispels the notion that science is a dry field where it's just pure math or pure computers. It is not that at all. It is an experience in which one can be, one with the field, one with one's own thoughts and nature. So it's a deeply enriching process for me.
Can you tell us a little bit more about your research? What is it that you're doing in acoustics? What are you studying?
Sure. I'm studying really in a very broad level, that which vibrates is, I think, the best way to put it, that which vibrates. So basically, this world that we're surrounded in can be approximated as a vibratory system. Every system to second order has some sort of vibrational component, whether it's a wing of an airplane or sound in air or vibrations in walls and buildings. So it's an extremely broad field, and I'm studying vibration at a very fundamental level. And so the entire theme is, how do I look at this world and see vibration in it, is the idea.
Well, now I think all of us that are on this panel and paying attention are going to look at their world with the mindfulness of vibrations. So that's fascinating. Thank you for that. And we're glad you are here. I think questions are rolling in. So I want to make sure we get to plenty of questions from our fabulous students who are participating. So I'm going to turn it over to Amy and let her start asking those questions. And everyone watching, keep throwing them in the Q&A. We'll keep answering as many as we can with our time.
Absolutely. So one of the first questions that have popped up is, how do you balance those days where you're unable to really think through and be mindful about the work that you are doing? Those super busy days, what kind of practices might y'all implement?
I don't mind starting off, I guess. Carly mentioned she kind of has a schedule she checks in with herself on, and she can probably elaborate on that more. I've definitely struggled in this role that I'm in now because by nature it's more collaborative, and so I'm in a lot of meetings, and so my days I've lost that time that I had to myself. So some of it is having to literally put a block on my schedule so that nobody else will overschedule it, to give myself time during the workday. But I alluded to kind of my method of dealing with it otherwise is going ahead and leveraging those times that I know I'm doing something else, but that is mindless, but letting that time be my time to kind of think through problems. So that's kind of the way I've handled it. It means that I'm technically doing work on non-work time, but it doesn't feel that way to me. As somebody who enjoys solving problems now, I don't know if somebody else would feel the same, but that's kind of how I've done it. So.
Yeah, I would say kind of what Angela said right at the end made me think of something that I think work from home has brought us, is like, hopefully your hours are kind of yours to set, and there's maybe a core amount of the day where people expect you online, but if you want to wake up at 5 a.m. and do some work and then go to the gym for 2 hours during the day, like that's fine. So I think kind of setting up your day to be whatever works for you. Like some people work better in the morning, some people are night owls. I like to kind of balance it, and sometimes it changes. And I think that's what's really nice, is like finding a place that is supportive of you doing good work, however it has to happen.
Which I think kind of feeds into this last question. If you're feeling overwhelmed with work, projects, or school assignments, how do you organize it efficiently? How do you put it together in a way that makes it more manageable or allow you to be able to tackle it?
I guess my short answer would just be like, a lot of times people ask you to do things, and if you just say, no, I cannot, it's usually a good enough answer if you have a reason. And especially if you understand your workload, like I think if you just like, oh, I'm busy, but you don't have any backup, that doesn't come across as well. But I think generally people know we're all busy. We all have jobs that we could work 80 hours at, but no one should do that. So I'd say like start with being upfront. And then if it's still a problem, sometimes it's just gonna kind of suck that week.
I think it's a really good idea, Carly. It's like definitely having boundaries, and that's something that I've always had. I think especially as females, sometimes we struggle to have those boundaries and feel okay about them. But I think you can build a reputation for yourself that you deliver on what you commit to. So I'm very careful that what I say yes to, I make sure I deliver on, and I deliver on, over and above what people expect. And so then I've found that people are very accepting when you say you can't, because they recognize you're going to do good work. So definitely, building on what Carly said, I think it's important to have boundaries. I think something else is, sometimes, to what Carly was saying, you might have just a bad week that you're slugging your way through, and because you can't, deconflict certain things. And I think then really understanding what is the bare minimum that somebody needs that you can give them that will keep them moving, so that they're still making progress, that they're not plugged up by your inability to meet everything, is a kind of one way I go about doing it. It's just trying to give them something, and that also helps you feel like you're getting something accomplished, which can be a struggle when you have 10 million things on your plate. So.
And Shrug, from your perspective as a student, because sometimes as a student, you can't say no to some of those overwhelming projects that get assigned to you, right? So as a student, how have you, especially as a PhD student in your research, how have you found to help kind of manage that perspective as well?
In addition to seconding everyone's thoughts so far, and I love that sentence I think Trisha put in the chat, no is a complete sentence. I've used that many times, just no. But I've found that for me, especially when I'm overwhelmed and I just have to do work, I found that really balancing mindfulness and creativity, which is again why I think this entire seminar is so beautiful. Balancing mindfulness and creativity is really my solution when I'm feeling that I can't focus my mind on my work, which is very often. I try to do something creative. I think creativity has more to do with our emotions and our kind of intuition. And we have these capacities to focus the mind and also to kind of channel the emotions and the heart. So what I do is when I'm having a hard time focusing, I maybe engage with my studies in a creative way. For example, right now I'm studying for my qualifier exam while trying to do all my research and stuff. So the qualifier exam is like this big dreaded exam among PhD students. And my creative way of engaging with that is by making a little website for future students to kind of use. And so that's a creative kind of designy way of making my studies more palatable.
Awesome. It's a great way to frame it. So shifting gears a little bit, we have a couple of questions in here about the internships in college or high school to get a job at NASA, and not just NASA specifically, but what were y'all experiences or internships that y'all participated in that helped to get you in this direction or help to position you well to make these career transitions?
I think any experience is good experience. So don't discount what, just the fact that you're out there and you're learning, and it also helps guide you to figure out what you want to do. So I did do internships. I didn't do them. I did one internship because of growing up in the Washington, D.C. area. I did have access to some internships at NASA Goddard and through the Department of Defense that I did as a high school student. And so that was helpful. But I found when I got to college as a college freshman, I thought, wow, I already have 2 summers of experience. This is going to be awesome. And as a college freshman, nobody wanted you to give you an internship because they're like, you don't know anything yet. And they felt like they didn't want to do like maybe some of the groundwork you might have done as a high school student, but that you didn't have enough experience base yet to really perform doing some of the work they might have for somebody that's been in, a junior or senior or a graduate student. So I think just take whatever experience you can get. I did still do some internships. They were just harder to come by that freshman and sophomore year. And none of my internships in college were at NASA. And I did work right out of undergrad before deciding to go back to grad school. And I don't think I could have gotten a job at NASA with just an undergraduate degree. I think I definitely needed the master's degree in order to get in the door. So kind of in a pretty specialized field. So it was maybe a little bit easier once you've had that specialization to have a pathway into NASA personally.
Does anyone else want to kind of touch on theirs?
Sure. I did not do any internships in college. I wouldn't recommend that path. It was a little hard to get a first job. But I guess I did have kind of an interesting post-college experience where I started working and I was in land development. I think I mentioned that earlier. And it was pretty boring, not very fulfilling. It was big box retail. So it was just really kind of not interesting. And I actually went back to school and did a master's in city planning. So I had an interest in city planning, and those were the jobs that were looking interesting to me. And it ended up being a really good combination to do undergrad, civil, and then city planning, obviously. And I hadn't necessarily given up on engineering, but in planning school was when I realized that engineers were designing streets and bike lanes, not just highways. So I guess through grad school in planning, which I guess was somewhat of an internship, I kind of figured out a path that engineering was, still creative. But I would definitely recommend doing internships in college. Yeah, whatever you can get, it's still relevant work experience to work skills in general.
Which I think is great. You touched on this, and this was one of our other questions here, is how do you step out of that mindset that STEM fields don't revolve only around analytical ideologies, and that there is a certain amount of that embracing of the creativity and your own ability that comes into play with that? How have you developed that type of mindset? Shirago, we can start with you, since you sit very much in that space.
Sure. I think for me, again, yeah, going back to that balance, between the two, that the world is not just purely analytical and just purely emotional. Someone had asked what I typed the answer. My previous studies in undergrad were in physics and music, in which those worlds were very apart. The analytical side was kind of the morning classes, and then I'd go to the afternoon and the music side. And it was like literally I was doing analysis in the morning and kind of more subjective musical exploration in the afternoon. But these things really can be combined. And really what, on a deeper level, the arts are an expression of the subject, the pure subject, and the sciences are an expression of the object, right? A study of pure objects. And what we all want is for sort of a merging of the subject and object. And so what I found in my career, and sort of one of my goals is, how do I relate as the pure subject to this world of objects, kind of on a deeper level. So the other advice, I had written some notes here, things I wanted to get at, and really my main takeaway, I really wanted to emphasize that, and this kind of relates to the previous question, this idea of diving deep into one's studies. And I love what Carly said about taking every opportunity that you can get, whatever it is, whatever we're given in our careers or our lives, we should embrace it and just dive deep, try to love it, give it a chance. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And something that I love that we're highlighting and talking about this is because here on campus, we see very often a lot of our STEM students are in band. They know instruments. We have student orgs, even within engineering and College of Natural Sciences specifically, that are orchestra and some type of band and music and creative arts. And so yes, there is sometimes still this misconception that, science is over here and the arts are over here, and very much can belong to, they are of the same world, and you can belong to both. So I really appreciate y'all touching on that and talking about that. And we've gotten a few of variations of these types of questions. What are those experiences that you took advantage of? Yes, take advantage of all of them, because it's just as important to figure out what you don't like as much as it is to figure out what you do like. What were some of the things that you did or took advantage of to have you choose this specific career path? Was there one moment or several moments that you're like, yes, this is it?
I guess I could start. I guess I've most recently been the one to kind of select my path just a few years ago. And what happened, it was really remarkable. I was on the phone with a friend who was a musician from high school, and we were just talking about our lives. So this was my last year of undergrad, and I was trying to decide what to do with my life upon graduating. And we were talking, and I was telling him I was applying to physics PhD programs. So again, that goes back to that dichotomy of the arts and the sciences. And I was telling him how I wanted to pursue just the sciences. And he said, no, you're missing out on the other side of life, this whole subjective exploration and the art, which I love so much. And he was the one who encouraged me, find a way to combine these two things. So that was the moment when I literally just Googled acoustics. What is acoustic? Because it's like the perfect combination. And that's how I found about UT.
I love what you're saying there. So it's interesting, when I was trying to decide what to major in, I was debating between, I'm a flute player and was, accomplished, and thought a lot of people encouraging me to go into music and versus engineering. And I felt like, well, there's not really any real pathways to jobs that I would like in music. And so that's why I went the engineering route. And I've never been sure that engineering was right for me, probably until like maybe the last 5 years, to be totally truthful. And so I think, to what he's saying, like, Shrag, you're saying like, I just found my path, but you're going to be on multiple paths, and they're going to wind and go all sorts of different places, and being open to that is really important. So you may start down one path, and just what you're saying, like being open to whatever experience you have and letting it take you where it goes, and willing to just follow it and step through an open door is a really important aspect of navigating things as they come, because you never know where that open door may lead. And so I've just been really fortunate. Like, even doing this detail that I'm in now, where it's kind of more organizational design as opposed to like the pure technical engineering, I'm using my problem solving skills and all my engineering background of how to move from point A to point B, and systems understanding, and applying all of that in a really cool way, and a much more creative way than I've been able to do in other parts of my career. And I don't know where that's going to take me. I don't really know what happens after this detail. And so it's a little bit of like trying to figure out my path again, but I think it's a cool spot to be in. So be open to that.
Yeah, I'm definitely a fan of the winding path. I think I have an interest in landscape architecture that is kind of the creative and technical side. And sometimes I think, oh, if I could go back to when I was 18, maybe I would have majored in landscape architecture. But I think the life experience I've had until today is what brought me to landscape architecture and the interest. So I don't necessarily second guess it. It's just every day makes you the person you are the next day. And I think it's probably going to work out if you are even thinking about making it work out.
Yes, I love that. That's such great advice. And we did have a student ask that they're a high school student. So does anyone have any tips for finding those experiences? And I think y'all already have touched a little bit on that, is kind of exploring and taking advantage of it. Is there anything specifically though that y'all can name and think of for high schoolers? Are there are camps or certain areas of things that they could potentially participate in to start navigating and figuring this out? Because like you said, maybe back then you would have known to major in this very specific thing. So what can you do to kind of get some of that exposure?
I think the camps are really important. Like as a parent too, I look at, things now as I have kids, like I just feel like there's so much out there that kids today have access to that, like I wish I had access to. So there's a lot of camps out there, so definitely look for those types of things. I did do space camp when I was a kid, and that is a big part of my story, because when I had wanted to do that and had begged to do it for years with my parents before they finally let me, and I had to earn, the money to go, but it helped me to see a pathway, because I wanted to be an astronaut, a pathway to becoming an engineer, because I had never considered engineering until space camp. And they talked about, well, what are different pathways to become an astronaut, and engineering was one of them. So you never know what you might get out of a camp. So I definitely say explore as many camps as you can. And we already kind of highlighted internships. Definitely just look for different internships, because they can open up doors of opportunity, even as high school students, and even just real job experience. It doesn't have to be an internship, just working summer job, or an afternoon job after school or whatever, volunteering too. This is something with my kids. I have one child that's really interested in animals, and so just getting her that exposure to being around things and volunteering is something she can do now as a 10-year-old that, and you have way more opportunities as you get older into high school. So being open to those types of opportunities is really important.
Absolutely. I'm putting in the work. Sometimes a Google machine is out there for a reason, right? And you can kind of use it. It may take a little bit of time and a little bit of work on your part, but you can, sometimes come and dig out those opportunities. So we have time for one last question, and it's going to be really centered around the communications. We have this great question from a middle school teacher, actually. As several of her students, female specifically students, are terrified of giving oral presentations in front of their peers. So how much of your job does giving presentations or talking in front of groups of people is part of that? Is part of your job?
I can say for me, it's all my job. So, and I can remember being terrified of giving presentations. So the very first one I had to do was for one of the Department of Secretary of Defense, and that one internship in high school. And I still don't like talking in front of people, but if you do it, you get better at it. So here I am talking in front of you guys. So definitely a part of it, and you're going to have to just step through it and really, there's no other way to get better at it, unfortunately. I don't know, Carly and Shroud, have you guys had to do a lot of presenting?
Yeah, I've done a lot of presenting to different audiences, like internal to the company. Like, you don't always know everyone you're working with, and you want to make a good impression. Sometimes you're talking to like at a public outreach meeting, and people are mad, and you have to smile politely and defend your proposal. I think it does get easier as you get older and the more you do it. So yeah, I mean, just doing it more and knowing that like people are probably not going to remember that you mispronounced something, or maybe you sounded nervous, but I think everyone has been nervous at some point. So, don't overthink it, though we always will, I guess. Yeah, I mean, I was really shy as a kid, so now I'm still introverted, but I wouldn't say I'm shy. But I think you don't have to go be like Barack Obama and be like a perfect orator, but you can still kind of be engaging and friendly and like try to be yourself. Like, I'm from Tennessee, so like I like to smile and be friendly when I talk to people, and people from like New York make me uncomfortable because they're very like stoic, and so kind of try to be yourself, and you're probably going to sound okay, and then you'll just get better every time.
And just to quickly add to that, I think my experience has been that grad school certainly has been a lot more presenting than I imagined, a lot more PowerPoints than I ever wanted to do. And I'm also terrified of presentation. My voice shakes and I tremble, and it's really bad, but it's just something we all have to go through.
Well, you all have been amazing presenters and panelists today, and it takes bravery, right, to get up there and to do these kinds of things and to be comfortable with your camera on and responding to questions that you don't know what are coming. So we greatly appreciate Angela and Carly and Shrag for joining us today and sharing their stories and their experiences. And I invite all of you who are joining in to come back to future FabFems Friday webinars again throughout June and July. You will see some of our current students actually being brave on future webinars, because we have a number of amazing STEM student interns this summer who are going to be leading and facilitating and serving in the role that I am and Amy are right now for all the rest of our webinars. They're watching right now, so I'm waving at all of them as they're watching in our conference room and seeing how this works. But then they're going to be brave and practice their communication skills doing this kind of thing. So communication, you will not get away from it no matter what field you go into, STEM or otherwise. So thank you all again for sharing about mindfulness and creativity and design thinking and all of these amazing things that you have shared with our participants today. We'll see everyone hopefully next week again. And I think Angela is even joining us for another webinar next week or coming up soon. So we'll get to see her again and learn more about her experiences in air and space. So please join in again. Have a wonderful rest of your Friday. And I think, Amy, did we throw in those things in the chat? Awesome. Amy threw in all of the links in the chat for upcoming FabFems Friday. So don't miss out. We will see you again. Thank you, everybody. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Bye.